You've got questions? O'Reilly Auto Parts has answers. Need a pro you can trust? We've got that too. No matter what you need, our professional parts people have the training and expertise to help you do things right. Deep automotive knowledge, just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Behind the Human. I'm your host, Mark Champagne. Even though it sounds like I've got a bit of a flavor of Barry White in my voice right now, and that's not a filter on my mic, that's just me kind of navigating a standard cold. So I've got a little bit of a deeper voice. Hopefully that doesn't annoy anyone, but it's still me, I promise. And as you know, it's my job to unpack the mental fitness practices and the stories of people living at the top of their game, personally and professionally. Today we have such a beautiful, stunning human, Michelle Murphy, on the show. She is a dedicated medium who specializes in connecting clients with messages from their loved ones and spiritual guides, fostering clarity and peace during times of transition and grief. With an intuitive and heart-centered approach, she aims to help individuals navigate their emotional landscapes and cultivate a deeper sense of belonging and connection in their lives. And just for perspective, I guess we met Michelle several years ago now, around the time that my father had passed. And it was one of the first times, well, not one of, it was the first time I've ever had an experience with someone of your skill set, let's just say. Which was so powerful, so beautiful. And I reconnected not too long ago, or we reconnected for what I'm calling just like a little top-up experience, which was beautiful again. So Michelle, thank you so much for being here and for everything that you do.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you do as well. I really enjoy your work,
Wow,
Mark.
that lands in the heart. Thank you. Okay, so before we get into an action-packed show and full of topics that are super interesting to me, at least, and I imagine to many of the listeners. If I strip away essentially the title and everything I read in the bio, who are you?
Oh, I kept this spontaneous because I seem to change every day, as we all do, you
Yeah.
know? Um, I think I am a curious, tall child.
Ooh, a tall child. Tell me more about the tall child. Just
Well,
physically
I
tall?
like just well, I am 5'7.5", which is considered somewhat tall, but not too
Okay.
tall. Um But a tall child is in I still feel, the wonder and awe
Mm,
of the world in small things more than even great and big things. So that's how I would define myself if I had to. Outside of all of my
yeah,
relationships, at the core of who I am is a person who is, truly full of wonder. And I think that, wonder and that curiosity is a gateway to my work.
interesting. Did you always, because I find with, and myself included, in this statement, but I find that a lot of people that I get to study or interview, they lose that kind of childlike wonder, and I like how you describe that, like that tallness, I guess you can say, but then they find their way back to it. So did you keep it? And if so,
I
like
I
how? Because I feel like that's a superpower in itself.
Yeah, I have no idea
Mm,
how. I think I if I were to say one of the biggest informing elements of my life was loving parents and an incredibly supportive sister growing up. So when your home space, when you are allowed the privilege of so much support and love in your life, it changes who you are. It allows you to hold on to hope and a certain measure of innocence as well.
that's beautiful. So,
Yeah, I'm very blessed.
Michelle, what is it that you do? Just to set some context and before we get
A few
into it. Yeah,
things.
what is it that you do? Let's talk
A
about
few
it.
things. So, as if you remember, I can give you my the spiel that my clients get
Sure.
when they call. And it's not really a spiel, but it's the introduction where I say a few things can happen in session. People come to me in grief. Um, and so in that capacity, I work as a medium. I don't see or hear anybody from the other side, but I feel the emotion and I receive flashes and memories that belong to them, and I try to translate them and deliver them. So that's what I refer to as proof of love. They don't give us any advice about our lives, they just give us proof of love.
Mm,
The other work that happens is guidance. It's non-predictive work, but I can sense when people are stuck. I can sense when people are maybe going through a transitional phase, a little bit lost, not knowing which end is up. And so I can often help with that. I'm not a therapist, but it is somewhat therapeutic, I'm
I'd say.
told. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Spiritual bitch slapping.
Yes,
Am I allowed to
of
swear here?
course.
Okay,
That's probably
spiritual
gonna be
bitch
the
slap.
episode title right there. I love it.
Well, I do call myself the spiritual bitch slapper.
Yeah, yeah.
So
When I have so many questions because it again, like I said, I mean, we've never had someone like yourself, on the show, and I feel like in my own journey with, starting with mental fitness, it's just opened up so much curiosity around different modalities and practices and
mhm,
ways of which to, I guess, live in the physical world, but then of course kind of explore what else is out there, which I feel like we have such a small fraction of a understanding of what else is out there. And, right?
yeah,
Like, so what I mean, you mentioned, and I guess this is how I came to you as well. I wouldn't say, I wasn't in a massive state of grief, but more of like looking for comfort in some capacity. Is that kind of the
mhm,
main theme that you see with your work?
absolutely. Even when people aren't in grief, they're seeking some sort of comfort or grounding or center.
Yeah.
Um, I do sometimes deal with what I call my last ditch reluctant clients who are in very, very profound grief. But I'd say most people come because they're just a little off,
Mhm.
and they're curious about where their loved ones might be.
Yeah.
And I don't know where they are, but I know what they feel like, and I know that love never dies.
Yeah. When did you first know or experience your gift? Is that the right terminal? Like, how would you describe
I
your
think
work? Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
A gift, yeah, I
Okay.
guess a gift. Uh, it's hard to say because it was always in
Yeah.
me. From a very, very young age, it was always in me, and mom and dad Irish Catholics, and the Irish, they believe in mysticism as well, and we understand that, and I am by no means suggesting I'm a saint, I'm far from it. Um, but a lot of the saints were mystics as well, Saint Catherine of Siena and, Francis of Assisi, John of the Cross, like a tremendous number of them had mysticism in their bones.
Mhm.
So, I was never alienated or shamed for having this, intuition about myself.
Interesting. So what kind of conversations did you have then with either your family or close friends to, I guess, try to describe what you were feeling? Because there must have been a point where you're like, "Oh, I'm not like, not everyone is experiencing this or knows how to tap into what you're feeling or hearing."
Yeah, I don't recall any specific conversations. It was just I was always the person who people would go to if they needed help with something. Even at a very young age, people were drawn to me to kind of, I guess, flesh out their problems, and they'd leave feeling better. And then it got more and more specific. And then I guess it was in high school, I had this uh, strange trick. I could read the backs of people's hands, the backs.
Okay.
So not the palms, but the backs. And I'd just be able to tell stuff about people. I don't even know to this day what that
Yeah.
was. It was just an interesting party trick.
No kidding.
Um, Yeah, and then it got more specific, and I took it more seriously when I realized that, people were, uh, needing the clarification, and the information seemed to be very helpful and a little spark of magic in it,
Mm,
and I didn't go to school for any of this. I actually, thought I fancied myself a bit of an academic. I thought I'd teach English at a university level, but that didn't happen. Um,
yeah.
and I worked corporate for a little while, but this was always somehow the foundation of who I am,
So it was always in the background, it's just okay.
always.
So
Yeah.
what was the final kind of push or moment of clarity, I guess, for you where you're like, no, no, I mean, I need to be doing this specifically.
It came in a moment of profound depression.
Mm,
I had just had my first child, and I thought it was postpartum depression, but I realize now that it was really, um, all of the distractions, all of the scaffolding of my life shifted into, parenthood,
okay.
and there's a certain profound silence and noise at the same time that comes with, becoming a
Yeah.
parent. Nothing really prepares you for it. It is such a privilege. It is such a privilege, but I was blindsided by just how busy and, unpopular opinion, kinda futile. If you're on a career path and then you have this beautiful being screaming at you, you are officially, on their time,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So, it's not so much futility, it's now you are in service of them.
Sure.
At least you should,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, all the noise of my life receded, and I started feeling incredibly depressed and extremely anxious, and after months of therapy, I came to the realization that it wasn't my mood I was feeling, it was everybody else's mood. So wherever I went, I would feel everybody's everything all the time.
That's a bit heavy.
Oh, it was so heavy. It was so heavy. It was so heavy, and this was 22 years ago
Okay.
when we used to call it ESP, extrasensory perception. It was before anybody used the word empath in the capacity that we use it today. Um, so I didn't know what was going on. Um, but thankfully I put 2 and 2 together, and I've been doing this ever since as my work.
How did you continue from that place then? So you're a new mom. You're
Yeah.
feeling all the feels of not just you, but a whole bunch of others. Like where
Yes.
I mean, that feels I can barely handle myself. No, never mind, the
Yeah.
the numerous voices and energies around you. So like what happened next, I guess?
Well, here's where mental fitness comes
Okay.
in,
Yeah.
right? This is where mental fitness comes in. Um, I had to drop all alcohol. It was tragic. So, I became extremely sober for the better part of 6 years,
Okay.
really. Um, I did need some medication because, again, I was dealing with suicidal ideation, actually, because it was so heavy before realizing what it was, and I was in, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Mm,
So there were a lot of practices that I put into play. I started going to the gym regularly, not to bulk up or anything, but just to be physically
yeah.
grounded. Um, I started being more mindful about what I was consuming in terms of entertainment. So I had to limit the more uh, dark dramas and, start watching happier experiences. And the books I chose to read were not my normal
Yeah.
kind of murder mystery dark.
Sure.
you know?
This is all the mental nutrition though. This is you're like
Yeah.
way ahead of your time with this because I feel like I'm talking about this now and it still blows people's minds around just curating what's coming into their mind and like just what as you said, just being really intentional with your routine and what
Yeah.
you're doing and so forth. So yeah, it's amazing. Keep going. I didn't want to cut you off.
And it was a little hit and miss too. I found I had very high social anxiety, and again, there were no words for social anxiety, in the, common vernacular. People didn't speak about social
Yeah.
anxiety at all 15, 20 years ago. So I was finding though that if I'd go to a baby shower or a wedding, I would be okay for the first hour, and then I just want to bang my head up against a wall. Like it was a deep-seated anxiety and a discomfort. So what I would start doing is, before going to an event, I would do something that would make me very body conscious. So I'd go for a run, or I'd lift a few extra weights so that there'd be a tiny little ache and awareness of my being.
Oh, wow.
And that made me realize that what I was doing is I was creating a stronger sense of presence in those
Yeah.
occasions. And then the day after, I would do, a long walk. I would listen to um, special music. I would do something that would bring me back to my own center.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a different sort of social life that you live as a real empath, as a genuine empath.
So then I'm assuming then you got to a point where the anxiety and I guess the depression started to lift a little bit? Like what?
It shifted completely, and I started having this ability to see when it was really mine and when it was my environment.
Okay.
And what you refer to as mental fitness, I call, emotional hygiene.
Yes, I love that.
And so on a good day, we wash our hands with soap and water, and we say the alphabet, you
Yeah.
know? The pandemic taught us
Yeah.
that. On a bad day, we get the scrubbing brush out, and we kinda go all Irish on
Sure.
it, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. I love it. I love it. So, okay, so then so you got to a place for yourself personally where you felt well enough, I guess, to kind of jump into this next chapter, right, of your life. And then what did that look like? What how did you get, cuz you left the corporate space or I guess you were on maternity leave, had your child, and then I'm assuming you're asking some pretty big questions around that time on, what you want to do
Yeah,
next.
yeah, very big questions. Um, I had a couple of, uh small jobs that I did because I really didn't know what to call this.
Yeah.
So I was doing some decor consulting, and I was painting wall murals, and I was doing anything and everything just to kind of try and create some semblance of structure in my life. And then people just started hearing about me because I just put myself out there, you know? In fairness, I had an incredible friend who, pushed me to do so. She actually invited me over for brunch one day and said, "It's not brunch, you've got 4 clients."
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
I said, "But I don't know what this is." And she said, "That's okay, nobody does, but it's helpful and it's loving, so do
So,
it."
because you were doing this for her then, I'm assuming? Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So, we all need a friend like
Yeah,
that, don't we?
yeah. And so then
Yeah.
your work just spread, word of mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, word of mouth.
Wow.
And it's really been word of mouth for 20 odd years. Only very recently through social media has it actually gotten any bigger than that. Um, and even years ago when I first went on, the internet, I had a website that literally said, "Michelle has succumbed to the internet. Welcome and blessings." And that was it.
Yes. I love it. I love it. Well, I mean, it's how if I think about how we were connected years back, I think it was Michael, right? Ventura?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Applied
Applied
empathy.
Empathy, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember, yeah, I did that's going back, those were really good memories. I did a
Yeah.
panel with him at that time, his agency on Applied Empathy, again, like, it's just the power like, we hear about this with products and services all the time, but I remember him saying, "I have someone you absolutely have to speak with," and, that essentially, that's how our introductions started,
Yeah,
and, like, I don't think there's nothing more powerful than that, and
it's so
but
true.
we because we
It's
get
so
so obsessed with all of these other you joked a little bit about the website, but, like, does the website flow perfect? And there's
yeah,
I mean, of course, that stuff helps and whatnot, but at the end of the day, if, you're working with someone and they leave, a raving review of some sort and then tell someone else, I mean, that is always the true path usually.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And I'm always amazed by the scope and reach that we all have. We are all so interconnected. The number of times, we're walking Venn diagrams. The number
yeah,
of times we can swing a cat and hit somebody who knows somebody else.
yeah,
It's really, really remarkable.
yeah, it's so true. So, Michelle, like, what does it feel like? Just because I do want to get into quickly or soon, just helping others and myself included identify if any of us have, an element of this gift. Because I remember last time we spoke, I think you said something to the effect of there's actually a lot more people than you would think. It's just we don't
Right.
know, right? But for
Yeah.
you, like, what does it feel like?
So, that's an interesting question. That's a very specific question. So, how can I answer that? Um, when I'm in session, when I'm in that channeling modality, it feels like I disappear. It's I think what athletes refer to as being in the zone,
Okay,
or
flow
when
state, yeah,
writers come to that point where the character takes over, So it's a flow
yeah.
state,
And do you have
but
something to
it's not.
drop into that, or it just happens?
Uh, no, it's pretty automatic. Your people are gonna be so noisy that I can't not connect
Okay,
to them.
yeah,
It's just they're, like, yelling at me, but they're not
yeah,
yelling. See, again, the language we use implies that I can hear something, but I can't, and so I'm kind of on a mission. um, I often say my perfect clients come as needed, but not necessarily, because I hope that when they're exposed to the way that I do things, they understand that uh, a sense of their loved ones being there is indeed their loved ones being there. And the sense of it is security and solidity.
yeah,
Um, but it's not a voice, it's not a visual.
yeah,
So I think a lot of the times the media makes it seem, and there are mediums out there who can see and can hear and can predict the future and do all of those things. That's not me.
okay,
I feel it. I feel a certain measure, and when I sit with a client, the first thing I do, as dramatic as this sounds, the very first thing I do is I love them. So I get to love you the way your dad loved you, light a heaven to
yeah,
him, you know?
yeah,
So it's this beautiful vulnerability that both of us share. And when people say to me, "I'm a little nervous," I say to them, "Well, I'm the one who could make an ass of myself, not you."
yeah,
So it's a really beautiful space to occupy. And I think what it feels like in session is that flow state, except it's also a flow state with a little amnesia, because I couldn't repeat what I said 2 minutes ago
mm,
when I'm channeling. I'm hearing it as I see it say it. So it's almost spontaneous wisdom, and we all have these moments of, "Where did that come from? How was I so smart?"
yeah.
I'm sure you have it all the time, and I listen to your podcasts, and some of the connections you make with people are absolute heaven sent,
Oh, thank you.
So it's a beautiful thing to actually participate in.
Mm,
I think you can relate to
yeah,
that. So, I think we're all mediums to a certain extent, not to the extent where we hang the shingle and make it our
sure.
livelihood. No, I think as a professional, you need to have a record of specificity. You can't just sit and guess. You're dealing with people's most precious and deep emotions, and it's a very sacred experience.
Did you have any
So
just on that topic, have you ever had self-doubt around that?
every single time I have a
Yeah.
session, I have an invisible box of doubt that I fill before I enter a space.
Okay.
Literally, I have a glass box outside of my office,
Wow.
and I just teach it. And I'm like, "There's my doubt," because my clients aren't coming to hear about my doubt.
Yeah.
I owe them, I owe them my faith and my certainty that their loved ones will come through.
Ah, that's so beautiful, and I'm writing down the self-doubt box because, I mean, that's something on my side through my own work,
Mhm.
it that's probably the thing that comes up the most, and I hear this with others as well, of course. I mean, it just seems like it's a theme that's quite popular, so any little tips and tricks to help release that, is really helpful, really helpful. So I love that.
Yeah,
Do you have anything else
it's
that works for you?
what else works for me? I think, again, back to the emotional hygiene, you know, I've learned that I need to pace myself. If I'm too social, uh, I don't work well. If I'm not social enough, I don't work well. So everything is curated and paced. I have to be mindful of that.
Yeah. I remember
Yeah.
y
So it's
go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, it's about
Yeah,
self-awareness. It's about being kind to yourself so that you can be kind to others. And like hygiene, we wash our hands so that we don't actually get sick ourselves, but also so that we don't get others sick,
yeah.
right? So
I did find it because speaking of emotional hygiene, I remember our last, call together, you mentioned, because I didn't even think about this, but it makes sense now. You mentioned how, like, you almost fall into, like, that biohacking category, Dave Asprey's of the world, because you have to, given I mean, I know you shared there's this beautiful element of, I guess, empathy and love that you feel at first, but then there's the other side of that,
mm.
which
Oh,
I
yeah.
think I I guess you could describe as just heavy and a lot of emotion that if you don't do something with that, then I'm assuming you're not feeling great, and also, of course, you can't be there for your clients and your work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I do cryotherapy, I do lymphatic work, I do oh my gosh, you name it, I do it. I'm again, the overhead to be me is me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of overhead. So, uh, I I am blessed to have access to those technologies and to those, good foods and good resources and fresh air, and I acknowledge it as a privilege.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's amazing.
I don't take it lightly.
What do you do
Yeah.
to, just check in with yourself? I mean, do you have a long-standing, like, journaling practice? Like,
Yeah.
what are some good check-in questions that are in Michelle's world?
In my world, I do I'm sure you know, and, forgive me for not recalling if you've spoken of it in your podcast before, but, The Artist's Way.
Yeah, Julia Cameron. Yeah,
Yeah. I do my morning
yeah,
pages. Which, brief recap, it's not a journal. It's, pouring your how does she put it? You pour yourself out of bed onto the page.
yeah,
So, no edits, and some days my 3 pages look like a shopping list or doodles, and sometimes it's a character sketch or a microfiction, or sometimes it's a plan or a future self-scripting, or it's whatever's on my mind. Sometimes they're dream journals.
mm.
So I do that every single morning.
And what does that do
Um,
for you?
I I think it kind of clears out the clutter and the cobwebs so that I can observe the day fresh. So I've noticed I have greater capacity for beauty
Oh,
after doing the morning pages. So I will um, walk my dog, or my dog walks me rather. He's a whippet. Um, Milo Francis Murphy is his name. Um, he's so we'll walk together, and I will have, brighter eyes and keener ears for just my morning walk. And I notice when I don't do my morning pages, I don't have that clarity.
Okay. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Makes sense. Is it
And I
yeah, I was gonna
do
say, is there
a
anything else that you
yeah, that's my morning, and then in my evening, I do a kinda gratitude
okay.
journal, a little thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm also big on prayer.
Yeah.
Um, I like being mindful that every breath is the spirit of creator in
Mm.
us, and I try not to take it for granted, but of course, as humans, we take it for granted. If we were profoundly aware of all of our blessings, we would never move. We'd be busy counting our
Yeah.
blessings.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
What who do you learn from? And, like, who inspires you? What's whether that's books or shows or whatnot, but just I'm curious just for myself and others listening, if they want to learn more about this modality and what you do and so forth, like, where do you turn to?
Yeah. Um, I guess the classics. I love really, really good poetry
Mm,
and literature, and, um, I'm a big Shakespeare fan.
okay.
I really like Shakespeare. I just had a great conversation with a friend of mine who's a tremendous oh my gosh, he's such a good actor. He's such a good actor, and I said to him, "We need to think about doing, what if Hamlet" now that a lot of people believe in mediumship, what if indeed Hamlet the ghost of Hamlet is a legitimate character in Hamlet? Let's
Let's do
let's
that,
redo that.
yeah,
Let's do that. Let's make that happen.
yeah,
You know? So, I like classic literature. I think there's a lot of universal wisdom in poetry and literature. And if you think of what a book represents, it's a microcosm of an entire life.
mhm,
And the lessons you can learn in a life are right there,
yeah.
on the pages,
Well, you
you
must
know?
have a different because even since I've met you, it comes in little spurts because it's not my everyday, but I sometimes think when I'm reading a book or researching someone, the question that comes in my mind is, like, how much of this is I'm struggling for words because we don't have language for good language for what you do, but I guess that what I'm trying to get at is how much of this is, energy from another place versus just straight, this is the person in front of me speaking or writing or whatever it is. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm assuming that must come up often for you.
All the
Okay.
time, all the time, all the time, and I also enjoy art for that very reason.
Okay.
You know, we're not beholden to the limitation of language when we're standing in front of a beautiful piece of art,
Yes.
so and it's a very energetic experience.
Yeah.
I think research forgive me for not knowing, the details, but I did see someplace that research has recently shown that our brain lights up differently when we're in front of real, authentic art as opposed to a print of an
Oh,
art.
wow.
It's a very peculiar
Yeah.
thing. So I'm sorry I don't have the actual research on that, but our neurology responds different.
Yeah.
We respond differently to real art. So you wonder, like, the emotion is in that paint,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
But you
Same with nature.
well, for sure, and I just what came to mind was just thinking of we've probably all had this experience in some capacity, but whether it's a project you're working on or if you are writing and so like there is a difference when you're working on something that you can feel and you're putting like all of yourself into it. And it's
Yeah,
just there's just a different yeah, like we can't it's hard for us to explain, but there's a different energy to that and other people feel it, and I think we've been on the receiving end of this as well, which again, just to
yeah.
me, it's like we have little moments of proof that there's a lot going on that we have no idea about.
We knew
We don't know
nothing.
nothing.
We
Yeah,
really
and
and
it's
isn't that wonderful?
fascinating.
There's so much room to grow,
Yes. Yes.
right? And if we are as small as we are in the history of the world and the history of humankind, if we're this tiny, we might as well be spectacular.
Oh, well said. Yeah.
right? Like, let's just play like
Yeah.
that.
Oh, that's incredible. Incredible.
I think when I deal with so much sorrow, I am profoundly aware of how precious time is, and there's a big
Mm.
difference between contemplating mortality and experiencing it. So I myself had a little bit of a health scare a couple years ago, and I came through with flying colors, thank God, touch wood. Um, but I glimpsed the experience of mortality as opposed to the contemplation of it, and we we get to be here. We don't have to be here.
Yeah.
We get to be here. And also, if I can extend that back to when I had my very profound metaphysical shift into this realm of work, um, and I was dealing with suicidal ideation, I have such awareness of what our brain health is. I don't even like calling it mental
Yeah.
health because there's this stigma around free will and choice. You know, we are victims of suicide and we are victims of brain health
Mhm.
issues. Um, I'm on a bit of a campaign personally with that because nobody chooses to wake up to have depression or anxiety. We don't choose that. And if it were a matter of just reorganizing your sock drawer to get rid of your anxiety, we'd have so many clean
Yeah.
sock drawers, wouldn't we?
Exactly.
so, so I think I recognize that this language I'm using right now, it does come from a space of having that beautiful clarity that is my mind right now. And
Mhm.
I'm, again, just very blessed to be here. But I understand what it is to be on the other side of it. And we all need help in each other in those moments. I was really, really lucky to have friends that were incredibly patient and kind and wise and supportive when I was going through my own depression and family.
Yeah.
So not everybody has those things.
Well, how did you in that time, how did you leverage your I guess, there's your direct family and friends and support, kind of living world here, physical world, but
Mhm.
I guess what other support did you have from the spiritual lens or the energetic world?
Well, funny enough, I kept feeling, it's an awkward conversation to have because I pride myself on sounding normal.
Yeah.
Um, but I started receiving really interesting messages and strange phenomena from saints and angels.
Okay.
And one of them in particular was Saint Francis of Assisi,
Yeah.
who I kept getting these tingles in my head. Like my hair would get all
Yeah.
tingly and I wouldn't understand what it was.
As a pause,
Um,
I've experienced this with you, so this is not just for everyone listening, and because I know you kinda prefaced this as wanting to sound normal, but totally felt that with you, and it was quite magical. Anyway,
it is
continue.
magical, isn't it?
Yeah,
It is magical. So I called one of my woo sisters because we all find each other. It's called woo
yeah,
woo. Uh, so I called one of my woo sisters and I said, "Can you tell me what this is?" And she said, uh, "It's some deceased ex-boyfriend um, named Frank." And I was like, I've never had an ex-boyfriend named Frank. And I don't know what you're okay, fine. You're nuts, whatever. Um, and that day I was shoveling my side path and and I shoveled snow on top of a statue I have of Saint Francis of Assisi in my backyard, and I cleared his head off and touched his head right where my tingles were.
okay,
And I went, "Oh my gosh, I call Saint Francis my boyfriend." I always say, "Oh, that's Frank, he's my boyfriend." Because I love animals, I love nature, and I love his story that he was this incredible, privileged, charming, educated young man who went off to battle in the 1300s and came back with what we would now know to be post traumatic stress disorder. Couldn't reconcile the wealth in his home to the poverty in the streets, so he started stealing from his family in order to feed the poor, and he was
yeah,
eventually disowned. And so, I really admire, his
Yeah.
authenticity. So there you go. And so that happens to me all the
Yeah.
time. I'll get visits from, and when I say a visit, it feels like there's a scene of a movie playing in my mind,
Mm.
and I'll just have a memory that didn't happen. That's how I would describe these visits from the saints and the angels. So they would just pop in and straighten me out
Yeah, yeah, just give you a little
and
boost when
tell me to get tell me to get over it.
yeah,
I know it's the wrong thing to, but when a saint says to you, "Listen, I got over it, you can get over it. Find your
yeah,
purpose."
yeah,
Get distracted, proxy joy for purpose, and eventually joy
yeah.
comes.
I
And that was so true.
I think just in general, because and we see this in society, quite a bit, like, there's less and less people that are, I guess, religious in what the definition has always been, I guess you could
Yeah.
say, so and again, for everyone listening, to me, that is we don't have a higher belief system anymore for the
Mm.
most part,
No.
and, when you it doesn't matter what you believe in, but there's, like, something there that is bigger than you gives comfort,
Yeah.
and I know
Yeah.
for me, because of St. Francis, I remember our first call had come up, I think he was floating around or offering some energy and support, and I remember this, my wife remembers this too, because I wrote this down, and I'm like, "That name, like, really sounds familiar, and the location," and I remember looking up our trip to Italy, which had happened, I think, 5 years prior or something, and we went to his exact tomb and location.
No.
Yes, yes, and I never like, I'm getting shivers just, recounting that again, but it was just and I s
Isn't that
it's
lovely?
lovely, and the reason I share that because it still comes up around this feeling of comfort of, like, it feels doesn't matter what you believe in, but it feels good to have, Saint Francis or anyone's got your back,
Mhm.
and there's things like little
Absolutely.
evidence and little proof of, "Oh, well, that was interesting," like, I can't explain that,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
which I think is just
Yeah.
helpful in a world that is so it's a bit crazy, the world that we live in right now.
Well, a lot of religion, it is without getting too controversial, it's very man-made.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
construct. It's a construct. Um, it's a building, you know, um, but God is love, and I believe in love.
yeah,
And it's not a love that, I don't think it's a love that judges. Um, we have conditional love, which is transactional. We have unconditional love, which is saying, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross said, "Unconditional love is not loving what you understand, it's loving what you don't understand."
mm,
And then I think there's divine love, which is this force of expansion that I do believe is God.
oh, it's beautiful. Wow.
So,
Well, the time is flying by. I mean, that's a beautiful way to wrap, actually. Just, finishing on a force of expansion. I mean, that's poetic and feels good too. But Michelle, is there anything I haven't asked you about that you would love to share?
um, no, I think you covered it.
Amazing.
We dipped into the ether and came out with a couple of nice stories, I
Yes,
think.
I agree. And I hope everyone listening, I know for me, like just I hope there's an element of curiosity that is
Yeah,
sparking within everyone because again, there's just so much that we can't put language behind right now, but there's just and we've all felt this energy in some capacity. And if
yeah,
we wake up with going right back to how you checked in and this like childlike wonder and curiosity, it's just a beautiful way to live and experience
it
life.
is.
So
It is, and I think I would love for everybody to have that kind of peace, but, I will leave off with, I have to mention it, Leonard Cohen,
yes,
right up there with Saint Francis of Assisi in my book. the quote that resonates the most from Leonard Cohen for me is, "We are also lightly here. It is in love that we are made, and in love we disappear."
Mm, here's the love. Yeah.
Yeah, and Leonard
And Leonard
Cohen.
Cohen. Thanks to you, Michelle. I mean, I just
Thank you.
thank you for the your time, of course, but just, of course, a higher thank you around I feel like your life and your work could have taken different paths, of course, if you weren't listening to yourself and that you would you know, I'm tongue tied here, but the effort that you put into your own emotional hygiene, even present day, just allows so many people to have access to your beautiful gift and the ripple effect of that. Like I can speak from my own experience is it's not just me, it's been my mother, my kids, my wife and others. So thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you, and thank God, and thank you for your work as well. It's beautiful.
O'Reilly.
You've got questions? O'Reilly Auto Parts has answers. Need a pro you can trust? We've got that too. No matter what you need, our professional parts people have the training and expertise to help you do things right. Deep automotive knowledge, just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
At the UPS Store, we know being a small business owner means holiday time is still go time. Still get those orders shipped time. And still re-up on stamps and supplies time. That's why this upcoming holiday, while others close up shop, we'll be open. And happy to help you keep being unstoppable. Come into your local store today. Most locations are independently owned. Product services, pricing, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Be unstoppable.